2nd of May, 1945. Following the finale at Berlin, with the Germans completely finished off and the German surrender, the British soldiers knew it was time to go home, and so did the Americans, the Soviets, and other participants. They had just survived the deadliest war in history. Now it's time to pack it up. This is what the British soldiers faced after the German surrender and the ending of the European theater of World War II. But what most documentaries and what most people don't cover is, when it comes to World War II, is how soldiers got home. You might think they just came home on ships, and yes, you'd be correct, and then just got back to their families, but it was a little more complex than that. So, in this new series called Aftermath World War II, we dive into how the demobilization of the soldiers in each theater of World War II happened, starting with the UK. Aftermath Part 1, the UK. Following the news of the German surrender, spontaneous celebrations erupted all over the world. On May 7th, including celebrations in, and not limited to, Western Europe and the United States, as the Germans officially set the end of operations for 2301 Central European time on 8th of May. On the 8th of May, that day is celebrated across Europe as VE Day. Most of the former Soviet Union actually celebrates this victory on May 9th, as the end of the operations occurred after midnight Moscow time. The demobilization process began on June 18th, 1945, and was designed to release the soldiers based on their age and service duration, with key personnel released ahead of schedule. There were approximately 5 million service members in the British Armed Forces. The demobilization and reassimilation of this vast force back into civilian life was one of the first and greatest challenges facing the post-war British government soldiers. Soldiers received a one-time grant of £83 each, which was a lot of money for that time. The promise of a right to return to their old jobs and a set of civilian clothing, which included the so-called demob suits or demobilization suits, which are included or not limited to shirts, underclothes, raincoats, hats, and shoes. At the end of 1945, demobilization reached 750,000, and this number had doubled 2 months later after Japan's surrender. The transportation was a little rough to figure out because of the lack of research, because of the lack of information on that. I actually did find something, and it said this, and so I say this: the transportation was just simply amazing and simply smart and coordinated. They all returned on hospital ships, but due to so many soldiers participating either against their will or voluntarily in the European theater, the Allies, in a way, shot themselves in the foot with so many men being sent off. Sorry, I'm getting off track here. Back to the story at hand. The demobilization operations for the British lasted some 3 years. The last soldiers to return were the 1st Battalion, Somerset Light Infantry, departing on February 28, 1948, which also marked the end of the British rule in India, and also marked the end of all British operations in World War II, and marked the end of the demobilization process. That is just part 1 of the story. Of course, we still have to go through the United States of America and more places like that. Thank you for watching today's short documentary on how the demobilization process of the UK and more happened. Thank you and goodbye.